Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With your 2024 WWE Money in the Bank instant analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and we are here just moments after WWE Money in the Bank went off the air to break down everything that happened on the company's final premium live event before their second biggest show of the year, WWE SummerSlam. This was certainly a controversial PLE for WWE, and not only that, it was a news-making PLE for WWE, and we're going to break all of that down on this show. Vintage Chris Vanini will be along momentarily, but before we get to him, allow me to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So please head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can vote in our pre and post-show polls surrounding WWE premium live events, pay-per-views for other companies. If you follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast, your voice will be heard, not just on our instant analysis episodes, but on our second looks when we talk about those special events and, of course, weekly television. Hit us up at Getting Overcast. You can DM us, you can tweet us. We will insert your questions, comments, and thoughts onto our shows. Also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. And lastly, please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major television show, plus exclusive news posts on Friday. That is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We would greatly appreciate the support. Now, because this is a WWE instant analysis episode, and neither the Silver King nor Vintage are under the weather, and it also happens to be the evening. This is the first time in a long time that we both have some adult beverages for you. So allow the Silver King to crack open a cold one. And tonight, I will be drinking Oddside Bean Flicker S'mores from Grand Haven, Michigan, which, by the way, Chris, is just 90 minutes from East Lansing, the alma mater, Michigan State University of Vintage. Chris Vanini, what do you have over there?
Well, real quick, Grand Haven, I had part of my honeymoon there where I made that exact drive from East Lansing to Grand Haven for a couple of days.
Did you go to Oddside Brewery?
No, we did not.
Okay.
But that is a wonderful place. So good choice.
Yeah, there you go.
I have Angry Orchard hard cider, just normal crisp apple flavor,
Unacceptable.
Classic hard cider type of night for me.
It's a good drink, but not very, creative, I guess, is the best word to use.
Yeah, well, that's kind of par for the course. Unless New Mexico State is sending me some beer, I'm not the best at picking them out, I guess.
Yeah, we got to get you out in Texas to find a place to get you some good beer. Maybe I'll help you along with that. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk WWE Money in the Bank. Now, for any folks who might be listening to a Getting Over instant analysis for the first time, the way we do this is we break down every single match on the card. We give you our thoughts, our grades potentially on the match itself, what's going to happen, we believe, going forward in the storylines for WWE. And then at the end, we give you our final grade for WWE Money in the Bank. We'll also remind you on what all of our pre-show expectation grades were for the premium live event. And we don't necessarily break down the matches in reverse order of the way they were presented. We do it based on the biggest storylines, the biggest moments, some of the most important things that happened. So hopefully that explains that for you. And lastly, anything that happened on SmackDown that is directly related to Money in the Bank, we will also discuss before some of those individual matches. So we're going to kick things off where WWE ended, with Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens fighting the Bloodline in a 6-man tag team match. Now on SmackDown, we saw the faces Walking backstage with Orton's eyes again somewhat on Rhodes' title. In the ring, Cody and Randy said little before KO got serenaded with Olay chants right as he was about to tell a really sad story about being home for the last handful of days because his mom was hospitalized and she's fighting some medical condition. Owens said WWE, Rhodes, and Orton would have all been cool with him staying home, but his mom would have been mad if he wasn't there. So now he's solely focused on kicking the Bloodline's asses. There was also a video package featuring Sikoa, but we'll talk about that more on Tuesday's show. The long and short of it is it was very mafioso, almost like Suge Knight Death Row Records-esque of Sikoa like asserting himself as the head of the table. Again, we'll talk more about that on Tuesday. This seemed random, the thing in the ring with the baby faces, and relatively low impact until KO obviously told us exactly why they did the segment in the first place. The crowd really misunderstood his tone at the start when it started chanting. And I'll admit that the thought of like, why are you even here, did go through my head, but Owens delivered as he always does. And now there was a sentimental reason to back the baby faces in addition to the kayfabe reason to back them. I thought it worked, Chris. I'm sure it gave him a chance to exercise some of his mental demons to be able to say that. And then I think he did that physically Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, first off, all our thoughts with Kevin Owens' mother.
Absolutely.
Hope she can pull through that. Okay. And yeah, like, some people just need to kind of work through stress and difficult times. And maybe he was doing that or whatnot. But obviously the first thought is hope everything is okay there.
Absolutely. Now, this main evented Money in the Bank. Tonga Loa was the odd man out for the Bloodline. The other three wrestled. The crowd was great for the faces. KO stared a hole into Jacob Fatu for a good 2 minutes before the bell, clearly setting up a feud coming out of this. We want Roman and fuck you Solo chants came at the bell. The fuck you Solo chants were so long, I think Fox would have ended the broadcast if this happened on television. Like, it was multiple minutes of the same chant. We never would have seen anything. Sikoa teased fighting Rhodes only to tag in Tama. They took turns beating on Tama with KO going apeshit on him. Orton hit the draping DDT on Fatu, only to be surprised when he kind of ultimate warriored himself up from it because Orton was going for an RKO. He looks up and Fatu's just standing there right in front of him. It barely hindered him. Excellent booking of that spot. Owens hit a swanton bomb on Tama. Fatu killed him with a Umaga-style hip attack as KO got sectioned off from the faces for a really long period of time. Cody got the hot tag when Jacob's head hit the top of a ring post. Solo ate disaster kick with a poor sell. Tama ate a Cody cutter. Rhodes distracted himself, going on a tope suicida spree, so Sikoa caught him with a spear for a false finish. Solo escaped the pedigree with a referee getting knocked out as Cody hit him with crossroads. Owens capitalized with a frog splash, and Orton hit an RKO. There was no one there to count. Solo was dead in the middle of the ring. Fatu interrupted a Shield-style powerbomb attempt of Solo, only to run into the referee, crushing him into the post and steps, so he was knocked out even longer. KO stunned Tama, hit Jacob with the prime bottle, then frog splashed him through the table. Owens went to hit a package pile driver on Tama in the ring, so Loa jumped in, and he botched a low blow. Like, he punched him in the asshole, and then he actually low blowed him the second time. Now, he banged his head really hard on the announce table during Cody's tope suicida, so maybe he was knocked for a loop, and that's the reason, but it's maybe with the worst low blow I've ever seen, Chris, is what I'm trying to say.
I usually don't jump in on these recaps.
Okay, go ahead.
My take, just real quick, my take on what happened there was he went to do the low blow, but because someone's head was between Kevin Owens' legs, he couldn't get a clear one in there without.
Oh, you think he hit his brother's head?
In the face. Yeah, so he kind of like half did it, and it didn't quite work. And so he, in his decision to fix it was to just do it again because Owens like sort of sold it, and then they just did it a second.
No,
time.
KO didn't sell it at all. Almost like he didn't know that was supposed to be the thing.
I think
good point.
Maybe he was supposed to pick him up, and then the low blow happens. But that was my sense of what happened.
Okay, that's a good. Maybe I missed that, but one way or another, the spot was messed up. Orton then RKO'd both brothers, only to eat a Samoan spike from Solo. Cody countered another Samoan spike into two crossroads, and he went for a third. Fatu broke it up with Whisper in the Wind off the ropes, and then an Impaler DDT. Sikoa yelled, "Acknowledge me." He hit Samoan spike, with Jacob throwing the referee back in the ring for the 1-2-3 in 24 minutes. The crowd went from super hyped to dead silent in pure disappointment because they obviously wanted the baby faces to win. Now, there's no doubt that this match was high-quality entertainment. The fans were going wild for most of it. And the result made complete sense. We talked about it on the Ultimate Preview. You got to do Solo over Cody if you're going to give this guy a title match. I, for some reason, thought the babyfaces were going to win. But if the heels were going to win, you had to do it pretty much this way. I just question one part of the booking. You have the faces destroying Solo with one finisher after another, taking all the time in the world to do it, when all any of them had to do was grab the referee and revive him, just like Jacob did in the finish. And while doing that, you had Solo taking 5 huge moves without even getting a single count. I'd have loved for him to take one crossroads and actually kick out of it, because then you're looking strong. You're saying, wow, maybe this guy who's calling himself the tribal chief actually has some power. He's not a guy who's going to get beaten easily anymore. But then you have Cody do the 3 stupid crossroads deal again. Sikoa was already dead, and he's already been beaten more easily by Cody before, the single one. So for me, that part was nonsensical. I'm not sure how many people watching are getting that granular with it and like analyzing it to that end. But what I noticed while calling out some of the high points of the match is it was a lot of punishment for Solo to take when this is the guy you're trying to build. I understand he's a fake tribal chief, and you're supposed to think of him as a guy who is not fit for the title, but that's still the way the match transpired. And if you're going to have this main event SummerSlam, then you probably need to build him stronger than that. Fat 2, on the other hand, was completely made during this match. That was the biggest takeaway for me. Owens, like mentioned, got to exercise some demons offensively, just given what he's dealing with in his personal life. And interestingly, the crowd was 10 times more behind him than Sami Zayn. And we'll talk about him later. Owens was the star of this entire match. Fatu a close second. So while Sikoa got the win he needed, for me, I don't know that he's a believable title contender coming out of this, despite the fact that he's generating a high level of heat. So I'm at like 3.5 stars B, mostly because of the typical referee-involved finish. You get that away, you get something a little bit more real, and the match would have been higher.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fun match, not a good match. And that's just kind of what happens sometimes. Right. And that's what happens when you have a 6-man main event, a pay-per-view. That's just, it's kind of how it's going to go. So I just thought this was a lot of fun. There were a couple of botches, as you mentioned. It'll be a theme on the show. I did hope some people were okay. Like when Tom Alonga hit his head on the table, there were a couple of spots there that were a little concerning. But the end is what it had to be. It had to be the heels winning with the help of Tonga Loa, essentially making it a 4-on-3. Solo pins Cody. Like, there you go. Like, and to me, it's totally believable that Solo is a title contender because he's the leader of a group and he just pinned the champion. You know, like I think
it's believable. It's believable that he's a title challenger. I don't believe it's believable that he's a title contender. That's the difference I would make there.
Sure. I think that's been an issue for Cody's entire reign so far as champion, is that they've not done a good job setting up like a believable reason for things to happen or a believable challenger. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton more to really say on this other than it played out exactly as I expected. It was a lot of fun. I was surprised it main evented the show. In hindsight, probably good that it did. But yeah, you know, I didn't think Roman was going to come back for this. You know, we figured Jimmy couldn't get across the border. I did like, I guess that's for the other match, the Jey Uso stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe in the main event you'd expect a little more to happen at the end, but it really played out a lot like a Raw main event, but that's kind of what I expected from the match.
Right.
Without a stipulation.
Right. Like, I mean, it certainly paled in comparison to the Bloodline RKO tag team match in, I'm forgetting where that was. Was that Lyon or was that in Glasgow?
That was Backlash, right?
I think it was Lyon. Yeah. It paled in comparison.
Mixing together.
I know. Well, because it's been 3 weeks between shows and I'm being run ragged here. It paled in comparison to that. And again, we talked about this on the Ultimate Preview. This was such a heated, rivalry feud, whatever you want to call it, that it really needed it needed to be a street fight or Falls Count Anywhere. They got that by knocking out the referee. But for the majority of the match, you just want to see these guys beat the shit out of each other. And instead they're doing like old school heel tactics of like sectioning off KO so he can't get to the baby faces. And like a large portion of the match was just slow. And it's something that we've seen frequently in regular bloodline tag team matches. Roman, I believe, in Solo, it was a problem in their matches where there would be like a 6-7 minute segment right in the middle of the match where it's slow, ponderous tag team wrestling. And I think that kind of hurt the match. Whereas if it was Tornado Rules, which would have been an easy way to have it make sense, or a street fight or Falls Count Anywhere or whatever, I think it would have been more exciting from bell to bell. As you said, it was a great Raw main event, which makes for a good, fun premium live event match.
Right. And I will say, though, like, depending on the stipulation, if you make it street fight or something else, like that makes it 4-on-3.
Yes.
And you
from the start.
You would have had to come up with something to kind of get around that. I don't know. Have Jey Uso come around and take out Tonga Loa early on and make it 3-on-3 the rest of the match. Something like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, I imagine that's part of the reason they didn't do it. But, it could have had more.
Yeah, it could have been better. There was a great line from Corey Graves during the match. I just didn't want to miss this. He said, "It's interesting Paul Heyman is scared of Jacob Fatu because he's a guy who only hired criminals in ECW." It was such a good line. There were like 4 or 5 commentary lines on this show that were just exceptional. I wanted to make sure that was reiterated on this podcast. Also, after this match, Chris, WWE took a page out of basically every sports broadcast by having Solo immediately join the post show via headset in gorilla position, like 3 minutes after his match was over. And then they had some post-show final thoughts with the lead commentators, Michael Cole and Corey Graves, ringside, just like you'd see after a primetime football game or basketball game. Solo, when he was asked a question, he just said, "How about this? Acknowledge me." He threw the headphones down. But I thought in totality, that was a really cool move and something they should do going forward after the main event of every PLE.
Definitely a cool way to do it. I just would have loved to have gotten a little bit more from Solo, like make it worth it. All we got was one line from him that didn't really mean anything. So it is something I'd love for them to keep doing more. I will also say that Jackie Redmond, Wade Barrett, and Big E together were a fantastic trio.
Excellent.
Both on the pre-show and the post-show. So major shout out to them, especially Jackie Redmond, who was handling like 3-4 different things at once during all of that post-show stuff. So that was good. I liked that. It's a great transition into the press conference. Like it all flowed well. So that was a smart way to go about that.
I remember some light consternation from us when WWE brought in, like, I guess they were CAA clients, where Nick Khan brought in all his people, and we're just like, oh my God, they're pushing out the wrestling commentators and bringing in these people. And some of them didn't work. We know the ones that didn't work. But Adnan Virk didn't work. Jimmy Smith got better, but wasn't great. Kevin Patrick, I forget if he was there before or after, whatever the case. But Jackie Redmond, star. I mean, she is incredible. So yeah, let's give her some flowers here as well. Glad you called that out. Let's move to the Money in the Bank Wheatley American Vodka Prime men's ladder match sponsored by The Boys. And that was not an exaggeration whatsoever. Now, look, Wheatley American Vodka and Prime just sponsored the show. They didn't sponsor the match. But the match graphic, Chris pointed this out on Twitter Friday during SmackDown, made the title of the match read that way. Now, I'm not saying that it was leveled up thanks to Shazam Fury of the Gods, because that was used as a reason to change the name of a title, but it was still the Money in the Bank Wheatley American Vodka Prime men's ladder match sponsored by The Boys. Jey Uso, Carmelo Hayes, Andrade, Chad Gable, LA Knight, and Drew McIntyre. On SmackDown, Jey opened the show with a joke about actually getting into Canada. Apparently, he had a problem at the border given his old DUI. Knight put Jey over for succeeding outside the bloodline, but said he'd still get stomped out. Mello interrupted a Yeet versus showdown, but got cut off by Gable just as he was starting to flow. He complained with Andrade, then Drew, interrupting to CM Punk chants, promising to destroy everyone. He went one by one. He had some decent lines. He called Andrade El Idiot, and Andrade was on the top rope just like posing tranquilo, like while Drew said that, which was really funny. He asked how Jey even got across the border. That got a big pop. And then everyone brawled with Jey and LA teaming up to eliminate McIntyre. Chris, just did not enjoy this. I mean, McIntyre was funny, but it felt like it was out of WWE 5 years ago. It wasn't actively bad, and it did get good heat on Mello interrupting the faces at the start, but there was literally nothing else accomplished here. Half of the participants didn't even get to speak. Andrade was actually saying something interesting for the first time and got cut off. And they had just done a similar segment on the kickoff 3 hours earlier that was more enjoyable by direct comparison. Given how hot SmackDown had been the last few weeks, to start the show with this, for me, was a massive disappointment. I really did not think it was a strong go-home segment.
No, it wasn't great, but I mean, you had to do it. You do this every single time you get to Money in the Bank because you've got people from different shows. You got to get them in the ring together before they do the match. And so it could have been better, but I like the yeah versus the yeet stuff. I like Drew McIntyre's comments about the border because I don't know how many issues Jay has had in the past, but Jimmy has literally not been allowed to cross the border several times, which is why it was shocking he showed up like a year ago or something like that when something was going on. So it was fine. You just kind of had to set the tone. It could have been better, but it's fine. It's better than that one when that one a number of years ago when
sat atop the
show
ladders
started and they're all sitting on top of the ladders. I guess that one was memorable. So maybe that
I didn't hate that one. I know like Drew was on Twitter shitting on it, but it was memorable. And if I remember correctly, there were some good lines in there. Maybe I'm misremembering it. But I look back on that one fondly. Maybe I'm wrong.
You're remembering it.
So I am remembering it. Yes, that's true. So Jay's entrance opened the show. Strangely, only like 10, 15% of fans were doing the lights. Cole also explained that he missed Sika's funeral for the match. Knight got a bigger reaction than Jay. McIntyre got immediate CM Punk chants. Gable looked around for the Wyatt 6 during his walk. Gable got Drew in an armbar over the ladder. Andrade broke it with a really sick springboard leg drop. Fans idiotically chanted for tables 4 minutes into a ladder match. Andrade and Melo stopped that with a springboard inverted Spanish fly onto a ladder. Jay speared Drew early, and Gable went on a German suplex run, catching Melo off a springboard for Chaos Theory. Then he literally German suplexed a ladder, like the object, onto Andrade, which was so cool and so inventive. McIntyre powerbombed Gable into a ladder and Claymored Andrade out of the ring, only to eat BFT from Knight and an Uso splash as the favorites teamed before a yeet versus yeah battle on the ladder. Melo hit nothing but net on Jay. Andrade was a bit late on a save. A double ladder bridge was set between the ladder and the middle rope and then the ring apron and the announce table. Knight pushed Andrade into a 6 sunset flip powerbomb into the first one. He does that in every single ladder match he can, and it's a great move. Gable then overhead belly-to-belly suplex Knight out of the ring onto the second ladder bridge, which was awesome. Jay removed the ladder as Gable grabbed the carabiner. He swung wildly in the air, ultimately falling flat on his face and then eating a spear. With 2 hands on the briefcase, Jay then got yeeted off the ladder, literally, by McIntyre, who used another ladder as a javelin. And then he grabbed the briefcase, climbed up the ladder, grabbed the briefcase to win Money in the Bank in 17 minutes. I thought this was an extremely strong opener. One great sequence after another. A breakout performance for Melo. Andrade reminded exactly what he can do and why he was in the match. Gable was booked strong. He got a ton of offense. He was the clear MVP. And his Perk Gable run in the middle with the Germans, that was awesome. Based on what we discussed on the Ultimate Preview, it was a huge, huge surprise to me, Chris, that there was 0 interferences. And you could feel the crowd was waiting for at least one. I know I was at home, especially when Gable was atop the ladder. Like, the lights could have gone out, that ladder could have gotten removed, and that could have been because of the Wyatt 6, as opposed to like Jay just moving the ladder or something like that. Whereas most matches like this slowly move from first to ideally 5th gear at the end, this match felt like it started in 3rd, but never got out of 4th. One reason for that is the pacing was basically 1 2-man sequence after another, 3 at most. There was never a situation in which 4 or 5 of the guys were competitive for the briefcase simultaneously. That said, some of the spots we got were excellent, and many of them were super inventive. It was smooth as hell. The right guy at the time won in McIntyre, given his hatred of the briefcase and the hypocrisy that goes along with him winning it. And Drew literally yeeting Jay with the ladder was not only inventive, but is exactly what I predicted on the Ultimate Preview, given his long-term hatred of Jay and how that played into his character and his storyline. This was right on the margin for me. It needed another 5 to 8 minutes to find that 5th gear. 17 minutes for a ladder match really is not that long, and both ladder matches on the show went in 17 minutes. you only have 5 matches on the card. Why are you not giving this 22, 25 minutes?
Yeah.
But despite that, the spots were so good individually. I'm going 4 stars, A-.
Yeah, it was a really solid match. That again, like you said, it never got to that next gear in part because it just kind of didn't have enough time to. Starting at the beginning, Jay's entrance. I think we got to stop the phone stuff because I don't think it's working. Basically, outside of France or Scotland or whichever one it was, just not enough people are doing it. In which I think it looked better before with the lights on when you could see everybody's hands going up and down.
Absolutely.
Like that was a really cool visual. So I understand why they changed the entrance. I just don't think enough people are picking up on it. And so I doubt they change it, but that's just my thoughts
well,
on that.
I will say Triple H said in the post-show press conference, he said, we're doing a lot of things now and we're figuring things out so that January 1st, when we get to Netflix, the production is set across the board for the entire product. So I think they're trying different entrance themes. They're trying lasers. They used a lot of lasers over the last 2 nights of TV. So I do think that has something to do with it. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
I also think Jay entering from the crowd is kind of
Yeah,
like it's
overplayed.
It's cool when he's on the concourse, but it takes a long time to get down to the ring and it doesn't look great. And it is what it is. Anyway, also this match started like 20 minutes into the show.
18 minutes into the show. Yeah.
Yeah. It took a long time before we got to actual wrestling because everybody got their entrance after we saw every single person enter the arena, which I like. It was just too much. It was a lot. When Andrade early on did that spring leg drop, his like left arm smacked onto the other ladder that was on the ground. And you could tell that did something to him. Glad he seemed to be okay. And obviously continued on with the match, but that was a pretty nasty spot there. Underrated part of Gable doing the suplex of the ladder was the grunting noise that he made. He did it.
Yes.
He sounded like he was suplexing a regular wrestler, like a little.
It was
thing
awesome.
That was just so great.
It was so good.
Really added to it. And yeah, like it was like I'd give this match like B+. Like it was real solid. It never got into great territory, but I also think like we've seen a million ladder matches. There's only so many things you can do now.
That's exactly why. Sorry to interrupt you. That's exactly why I'm going A-, because if you're not going to have like an insane match where everyone's flipping and trying to hurt themselves and, the table spots and 3 ladders stacked on top of each other, if you're not going to do that, you need to do inventive stuff. And there were multiple spots in this that were inventive, including the finish. That's one reason that it went over the border for me.
Yeah, it's just like either you're doing that or you're doing Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers type stuff, or you're doing Anarchy in the Arena insanity that we got a couple months ago. Like it's hard to do something new at this point. And considering the people involved in this, I thought they all put forth an A effort to make it memorable. And some guys who don't take those kinds of bumps were taking those kinds of bumps.
And again, some of these matches are not just about who wins and how does the finish happen. It's who do you make in the match? And that's something that both ladder matches did. Spoiler alert, on Saturday, it made a lot of superstars. Andrade had, I don't want to call it a breakout performance because we've already seen him wrestle incredibly well in WWE, but it was like a reminder. Hey, I'm awesome in the ring. Gable, we've seen him have great matches, but it's like, look at the crazy shit I can do. Carmelo Hayes in this match had a legitimate breakout performance. And that's why you put people like that in matches like this. So was it the best ladder match ever? No, it wasn't even the best ladder match on the show, spoiler alert, but it was still really successful. One thing I do need coming out of this is Andrade and Melo in a feud. I don't care if it's 2 weeks long and it's 1 match or 2 matches. I want them getting 15 minutes in the ring, just them, because the stuff they did together here was awesome.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, let's move to the World Heavyweight Championship match. Damian Priest defending against Seth Rollins. There was a stipulation attached here. It was a gentleman's agreement. If Damian Priest wins, Rollins will not challenge for the World Heavyweight title during the remainder of his reign. And if Rollins was to win, Priest would have to leave Judgment Day. Now, there was a 2-part interview between Cole and Rollins that aired on the Countdown show. There's not that much we need to discuss here. It's worth finding your way to watch it. He talks about his injury, wrestling 2 times at WrestleMania, his time off, and the storyline with Priest. So I'm just saying to go find it. We're not going to spend time talking about it here on the Instant Analysis. Finn Balor gave Priest a pep talk in the Judgment Day clubhouse before the match. He made it clear to the group, Priest did, that no one should interfere under any circumstances, including if McIntyre tries to cash in. Balor stared Priest down when he left the room, and then he said, "Whatever you want, boss," sarcastically. Broken Arrow, Sling Blade, and Rollins' Tope Suicida all happened super early. Rollins had hit a springboard swanton and a lion salt in succession. Both guys frequently checked the ramp, expecting either McIntyre or interferences to happen, because you have to remember Drew telegraphed coming in. He said, "I'm going to win the briefcase, I'm going to cash in on the show, and I'm going to win the championship." After some type of botch off the ropes by Priest that was saved by Rollins, Seth had a frog splash, then walked Priest across the ring for a buckle bomb. He came back with a last ride power bomb. There was another odd sequence that included some counters, and it ended with half of a stomp for a false finish. Rollins randomly talked trash mid-match, which he never does, and commentary even pointed that out. Then he ate a razor's edge for another false finish. Rollins hit a superplex, and then they did a triple counter Falcon Arrow for what was the spot of the match until the referee went down to count, and he counted 1 and 2, and it should have been 3, except he pulled his arm up for no reason whatsoever. And then like 5 seconds later, Drew McIntyre's music hits. He enters with the briefcase. And what happened here is one of two things. Either Priest was concussed, or he had a stinger, or McIntyre's music was supposed to hit during the 3 count, interrupting the referee. So McIntyre immediately cashes in the contract, making it a triple threat match. Rollins countered Claymore with a super kick. McIntyre avoided the stomp and hit a future shock DDT. Priest countered Claymore with a clothesline, but McIntyre avoided South of Heaven, and he was supposed to hit a Claymore, but instead, Priest was not far enough away. He didn't create the distance that wrestlers need to create, and he just booted him in the chest. And then when that happened, CM Punk ran out of the crowd, destroyed McIntyre with a steel chair, choked him with a cable in the timekeeper's area. The Punk then grabbed the world title. He walked up the steel steps. Somehow, despite taking all that punishment, like 4 steel chair shots, getting choked out, McIntyre beat him back into the ring and ate a title shot to the head. Priest then hit South of Heaven, and he retained the title in 15 minutes. After the bell, Rollins screamed at Punk, given he cannot now challenge for the title again while Priest has it, and he had to get held back by Graves from fully going after Punk. Folks, I fucking hated this in the moment.
Yikes.
For so many reasons. Thinking about it some more.
Well, real quick. Sorry. Before we get into the reasons why we thought this was a disaster, can I give you my thoughts on the specifics of the match?
Sure.
Before we get into the things that went wrong?
Go for it.
Plenty. First off, a real tough spot to have this match right after the John Cena announcement, which we'll get to. It felt like it took a minute for the crowd to kind of wake up because we're all just talking about John Cena.
Right.
That was a tough spot. Rollins was breaking out some new stuff we hadn't seen in a while, which was cool, especially considering he said in that WrestleMania documentary he had a torn meniscus and MCL just like a few months ago. Crazy that he's back wrestling in the first place. Very cool. I liked his gear with the black ankle and knee with the white pants. I thought it looked cool. And it was a bit sloppy, but I was really into it.
Mm-hmm. Same.
And then the finish happened. And it was wrong for so many reasons. I'll let you go first.
Sure. So, like I said, I fucking hated it. And there's a lot of reasons I hated it. Thinking about it some more as the show progressed, I've softened my stance slightly, but I still mostly feel the same way. Let me start with the only real positive before I get to the rest. This did successfully set up 2 simultaneous feuds for CM Punk. Both of them having utter vitriol, the opponents for Punk. It also potentially sets up a triple threat. Now, we'll come back to that, but that was the lone positive that I found coming out of this.
I don't think that's a positive.
Well, perhaps. Let's go through the match in order here, okay? Priest and Rollins ebbed and flowed between botchy and really good. Mm-hmm. The match reached its absolute peak and was actually headed toward another level of quality on that awesome Falcon Arrow spot. Like, that was so freaking cool. And then Priest and or production completely botched the singular key moment of the match. The referee did what he needed to do given what was to come. He had to stop the count. I know some people say, we'll just call it like it's real. You couldn't do it because of the stipulation in the match and because of the Money in the Bank briefcase. He had to pull up his arm. Either Priest was unable to kick out because he was concussed, or production missed a cue for Drew's music, or both. And then the referee just pulled his arm up for what would have at least been a 3.5 to 4 count. The importance of the moment, unfortunately, made that botch an all-timer. The reason I say Priest may have been concussed or suffered a stinger is because he looked thrown for a loop in the immediate aftermath. And then he botched the positioning on the Claymore, which you don't think he would do if he was of, sound mind. Now, I would still say it's probably 80% on production, but we don't know whether that music was supposed to hit after he kicked out and looked strong or during the count. Regardless, as they were planning it, Priest still should have gotten a shoulder up. There was no reason to rely on a production cue in that moment and then put yourself in a position for a botch like that. So that was my take on that. Then, my real issue here, because botches happen, is you have Paul Levesque completely wasting the men's Money in the Bank gimmick for an entire year when there was absolutely no need to create additional heat in the McIntyre-Punk feud. Punk already prevented Drew from winning the title twice, including in his home country. So doing it a third time was not just unnecessary in a silo, but it was particularly bad given the cost, which was wasting the briefcase to do it. Punk either could have cost him before the cash-in, or McIntyre should have thwarted his interference and won the title anyway, or someone else should have won the briefcase in the first place, with Punk costing McIntyre in the ladder match itself. All 4 of those options would have been better. And more importantly, none of them would have resulted in the briefcase getting wasted. On top of that, it was so freaking predictable, but not in a sometimes predictable things are good way. Basically, half of the card was wasted and worthless by the time 9 o'clock ticked onto the clock. Neither match, as it was originally booked, the men's Money in the Bank or the World Championship match, ended up mattering. And then you have McIntyre, who's supposed to be a smart, cold, and calculated heel. Sure, he sees red, and that means he messes stuff up, but he just got revenge on Punk. He looked like an absolute idiot for telegraphing the cash-in and then following through by doing it. And then you have Punk somehow recovering from getting the ever-loving shit kicked out of him in 2 weeks? This was piss poor Vince McMahon style booking from Triple H here. The only thing it accomplished was restarting heat for Rollins and Punk, which will probably be a WrestleMania 41 match. And of course, it could be a 3-way at SummerSlam with McIntyre that would prolong their singles match.
For the love of God, don't do that.
I'm just saying, it's possible. But even if you wanted to do both of those things, you could have just accomplished that Monday night somehow. Why the fuck would you waste the briefcase, one of your most interesting storytelling devices, to add heat to a feud that was already a 9.9 out of 10? I'm not even sure how to grade this. The match itself was probably, like you said, Chris, headed for the high 3s. The Falcon Arrow spot was great, and it was really heating up. In the end, given the booking against the quality of the match, and by the way, the attack with Punk and McIntyre, it was actually really well done. So, even though I hated it, it was well executed, except for the botch. I'm at 3 stars B-. I'm not going to go lower because it was entertaining and it did its job and everything got accomplished, but this was so problematic. I mean, when we talk about Money in the Bank on the podcast, every year on the Ultimate Preview, these are the things they have to do to make sure Money in the Bank goes well. It's put it on someone who can get elevated by it or, needs to win the championship. Don't waste it by cashing it in right away, and allow it to be something that potentially helps elevate the person through a not necessarily year-long storyline, but a multi-month storyline. This checked one of the 3 boxes, and that was hugely problematic for me.
They put it on the only former world champion in the Money in the Bank match won the briefcase and cashed it in the same day and failed to get it. Just a complete waste.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It X'd out 2 of my 3 qualifications right there. Yeah.
This was a fucking disaster that did not need to happen at all. If you are going to have Punk cost McIntyre on something, cost him the briefcase.
Exactly.
Because then somebody else can get the briefcase and look great coming out of it. Nobody looks good coming out of any of this stuff. The Money in the Bank match or the World Heavyweight match. Have him cost the briefcase. I think that's overkill, but there's something, if you're going to do it then. This feud does not need any more heat at all. Why are we throwing another cost championship on top of it? We're a month away from SummerSlam.
He cost him the title in Scotland. The first ever PLE in Scotland. That's it. That's the height of it. Yeah, exactly.
Drew fake quit over that. Like Drew, after the show, he comes on to the post show and throws a little hissy fit. Man, like, there's no topping what happened in Glasgow. Like,
the only thing he can do now is kill CM Punk. Like, he has to murder him
with the sword.
He has to cut him in half. Yeah.
Okay. So doing it in the first place was such a stupid idea, and because you know who needed to come out of this looking good? Damian Priest. And now he doesn't, regardless of the kick out. I thought the whole purpose of doing a Priest-Rollins match was Priest would get a clean win over Rollins and would be like, here's the guy. He's had a couple of rough months starting with the World Heavyweight Championship, but he just beat Seth freaking Rollins clean in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy you need to take seriously. And even if he kicks out or whatever happens there, that doesn't happen. He again only wins because of interference and some wackadoo stuff happening around. Just absolute terrible booking up for Damian Priest on top of everything else, who has absolutely been put in extremely difficult situations ever since he has won this title. They're not putting him in a position to succeed. Even if he has had his own struggles, you've got to help the guy out more than this. As for Priest and the kickout situation, I thought he got hurt. Because a stinger or something, because it looked like he was out of it.
It did.
As he's kind of rolling out of the ring, he says something to the referee. Like he seemed completely out of it. So I was worried something serious has happened. He gets back up on the ring, and he had to clothesline. So I guess he was okay enough by then. And so that's what it is. Triple H in the post-show press conference kind of put a lot of it on the referee to count 3, but like you said...
Well, no, he kayfabed it. So in the press conference, Triple H goes, he was there as Paul Levesque. He goes, let me have Triple H answer the question. And then he said, the referee's decision is final, so on and so forth. So he was clarifying, hey, that's what happens. I have no idea why the referee did that. He did say, just to clarify, that he's like, Priest is going to get a lot of shit for all this. And he goes, it sucks because he did a really good job in the match up until that point. What no one asked, and it really, some of the questions in this press conference, they always frustrate us. What no one asked is, hey, did production make a mistake?
Yeah, credit to Chris Vanderlei for at least asking the question of what happened.
He did, but someone needed to ask, what happened in that moment? Did production make a mistake? Because if he's answering questions out of kayfabe, that's the question that needs to be asked.
Also, in kayfabe, if the referee stops his count because somebody's music plays, I'd be pissed off at that too. So I don't.
There is, to be fair, there's precedence across multiple companies for that. So
I know it's happened.
You're right. You're right. Like, it's stupid, but there would have been precedent for it.
Yeah. So that's a mess. But yeah, I don't know what the plan was. Kick out would have made sense, but who knows?
Chris, am I supposed to think McIntyre's the heel here? Like, after Punk did this to not just him, but Rollins also?
Well, let me get to this. Rollins Punk, another thing that does not need any juice to it.
It didn't need this.
Put 2 of them together, they'll be fine. We know they hate each other. You don't need to cost Rollins a championship something to start that whole deal whenever that happens. It'll take 2 seconds. You can put Punk and Rollins together, and within 2 seconds, they're selling out a house. They're fine. You don't need to throw that in there. So this was my thought. Triple H didn't say it after the show. I thought he might, but here's how I would have fixed all of this. You just say, if Priest is physically okay, you do Priest Rollins again on Monday.
You do, yes. You rematch it
for the title, same stipulation, and go for it. The referee made a mistake. We're gonna do this again. Like it's an easy fix, honestly. And then because there's no Money in the Bank, you just have Priest win straight up and give him the win and move forward.
You could do a Balor distraction because Priest told them not to help, so Balor does help, and then he gets angry at him.
You gotta give Priest a win.
No, I'm not saying
without CM Punk interfering, without somebody else interfering. He needs a win.
I'm not saying a distraction immediately into the pinfall, but you can do a distraction. Then like 2 minutes later, Priest gets the win. You know how that works. Like you don't have to.
I know, but I hate all that stuff. This guy needs like some stamped moments. And he's not getting them, and he's probably going to lose to Gunther at SummerSlam.
I mean, if he doesn't lose to Gunther, it would be shocking. I mean, that might be worse booking than this if he doesn't lose to Gunther.
So like, it's probably going to have to give him something because they have not given him what he has needed in this reign. And by the way, they showed at the end of the press conference there's a Damian Priest documentary coming out that they're working
on. And it looked good.
So,
it looked good.
It did really look good. The dude's got a hell of a story. We only know his story because he said it in the WrestleMania post press conference.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just not at all helping this guy. So like, if the match was botched for 50 different reasons that didn't need to happen, just do this match again on Monday. Have Priest win clean as a whistle, and everybody just move on from there.
Yeah,
it's the only thing I think you can do to fix this, and you can fix this. That's why we have.
Well, you can fix a part of it. You can fix a part of it. You can fix the way Priest looked coming out of it. What you can't fix is the fact that Money in the Bank is now wasted for the entire year. And I don't buy this bullshit take of like WWE doesn't want to, or it's too difficult to book 2 concurrent briefcase reigns. Bullshit. Number one, you have 2 different shows and 2 different rosters. Okay.
Yeah.
And guess who won? McIntyre on Raw and then Tiffany Stratton on SmackDown. So those are separate brands, separate briefcases. You can have one get cashed in 4 months and the other get cashed in 9 months. I mean,
you've got a year to do it.
You have a freaking, no one has ever held the briefcase. I don't think. I think Priest has the longest reign ever of like 285 days or something like that. No one's held it.
Yeah.
No one's held it 300 or 364 days or so. Like do something unique with it if you want to. Have, someone win it and put it to the side. I'm not going to be using this anytime soon. I'm going to find the right opportunity. There are so many ways that you can book the Money in the Bank briefcase. And I understand, yes, it does handcuff you as a booker where you ideally don't want that person to lose. But in a worst case scenario, you have someone cash in and lose. If you handcuff yourself and you don't want someone to drop the title and you don't know what else to do with it, they cash in and lose. They get it, they get rebuilt after the fact.
They lose via interference and they start a feud with somebody else and go on to do that. It's basically what you did here, essentially. You just do that.
But to throw it away in a match where I didn't want Jey Uso winning it. But guess what? If Jey had it, it would have been pretty damn exciting. Him potentially cashing in and all the pops that would have got. Remember the pop that Dolph Ziggler got? Imagine if Jey Uso successfully cashed in. Would have been a huge pop. Again, I don't want him to be champion, but they passed that up. They passed up Gable having this thing and the Wyatt Six potentially stopping him time and again from utilizing it. They stopped. I wouldn't, have given it to Melo, but strapping a rocket to Melo or giving Andrade something to do. LA Knight. Now, they couldn't do it for LA Knight because of what we think is going to happen at SummerSlam. But the point is that someone could have utilized it. And instead, they just flushed it down the toilet. And that honestly pisses me off more than anything else. Because you guys know, for those of you who have listened to me on this podcast and my prior shows going on however many years now, 7, 8 years, I'm a stickler for the usage of Money in the Bank. And Chris, this is the 3rd time in 5 years where the men's Money in the Bank winner wasted the briefcase. I thought this shit was over under Paul Levesque, okay? You had Otis lose it to The Miz. You had Austin Theory fail using it on the United States title. Now, Triple H did book that, but he didn't give him the briefcase in the first place, and he's not the one who made Roman Reigns the only champion, so that it would have been impossible for him to cash it in. Then you have McIntyre throw it away in a horrendous booking decision. That's 3 times in 5 years. And then before that, you had the Brock Lesnar win and like some other problematic wins as well.
Not to mention you have the women who cash in within 24 hours like 70% of the time.
Except to be fair, they didn't even put a women's title match on this show. That way it was impossible. Also, it does seem like they have a nice long-term storyline built out with that, given Nia Jax and Tiffany are becoming friends and, Bayley has the championship and so on and so forth. We can get to that later. So for the women, I'm not even concerned about it. But to just throw it away for the men pisses me off to no end because it's
for no reason.
It's one of those sticking points I had on this show for 5 effing years.
Yeah. And again, you don't need to do anything with Punk and Drew anymore.
No.
But even if you do it, just do it in the ladder match, because you do it and by doing it in the ladder match, you are elevating somebody. This took everybody down. It made Priest look worse. It made everybody in the Money in the Bank match look worse. I cannot believe this decision. And you mentioned it before. For the love of God, do not give me Rollins, Punk, Drew at SummerSlam.
Oh, I think that might well happen.
This has to be Punk, Drew. It says like you got to do it now at this point. We've had so much. You can't, if you're going to throw somebody in there for a triple threat because you want to stretch this out to WrestleMania or something. Come on.
Well, they did just announce Bad Blood, which was the debut show for Hell in a Cell. So theoretically, they could do a triple threat at SummerSlam, and then 2 months later do Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood. That is certainly possible.
Just don't do it at SummerSlam.
I'm not against the triple threat at SummerSlam.
Biggest match on the card. If Cody Solo is going to be your title match, Drew Punk can main event the show.
It's not just
on its own.
It's not just Cody.
It's the biggest match.
It's not just Cody Solo as one title match. It's Gunther, Damian Priest as the other.
Yeah, neither of those are as big as McIntyre.
But if you put them in a triple threat, that gives Rollins something to do on that show, and it's it is a big match. It is a big match.
Punk can't wrestle without getting hurt. It keeps happening. So if you're going to throw him out there for one match before he gets hurt again, make it a Drew match. Don't do it a triple threat. If you have the chance of never getting to Drew Punk. Because
but you're dealing with Punk first match back off injury. You're coming up with Rollins potentially second match back off injury. Maybe there's a reason they're doing it that way.
No one's gonna I'm gonna be physically upset if another person is getting in between Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. Just do it. The history of waiting to do something for WrestleMania is generally not.
Oh, I don't think they're saving it for WrestleMania. No.
And when are you going to do it if not SummerSlam?
You're going to do it at the 2 shows after that, whatever is in October, and then Bad Blood.
Not do it for Bad Blood or Crown Jewel or something.
If it's Hell in a Cell, at Bad Blood in Atlanta sold out, that'd be huge.
I'd rather have it in a goddamn football stadium at the second biggest show of the year.
Me too, but where do you go from there? That's the thing. So if they have that one-on-one match for the first time and one of them wins and it's clean, if you're trying to do a multi-month rivalry here, and Punk's not healthy enough to do it coming out of WrestleMania and all these things that they had to do, that's one way you stretch it. I don't think it's the worst. Let's see what happens Monday on Raw. We have a lot more to talk about. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world.
If you're stretching it, keep CM Punk off of my TV after he gets sent to the hospital for longer than 2 freaking weeks.
Well, that was my problem with what happened here.
If you're going to stretch it, keep him off screen.
Yeah.
They've been doing so much over the last month.
By the way, they could have used Punk to thwart a cash-in on Gunther or a Priest at SummerSlam. He could have successfully he could have lost to Punk on SummerSlam and then successfully cashed in later in the night on Gunther, become champion. Then you have Punk going after the title. That's another way to continue that feud. There are so many different ways they could have done this, and they picked pretty much the worst one.
I will say one last thing on this: how good Drew Punk is, because after tonight. Wade Barrett and Big E had a good quick conversation on the post show about in some ways we don't even remember how this started. And have you been watching House of the Dragon?
I unfortunately have. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of season 2.
I'm really enjoying it. But that is the theme of that show, which is we're going to war and everybody's kind of forgot why we're going to war. But there's been so many incidents that nobody remembers what the first one was. And in a good way, that's kind of where we're at here. These guys have attacked each other and screwed each other over so many times. What happened way back at the Rumble.
Well, do you remember where? I mean, it started. Do you remember why this started?
You could say it's a Rumble, but you could say it's back before when Drew talked about how Punk was a jerk to him back in the day.
That's how it started, and then he got his chance at him in the Royal Rumble, injured him in reality.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
We've had Scotland, we've had WrestleMania.
That's why this wasn't necessary.
I'm just saying we've had so many things. We've almost forgotten how it started. We just know these guys hate the ever-loving shit out of each other.
Yeah.
And that's great.
But their hatred didn't increase after tonight. It just stayed at the same level. Yeah.
It didn't need to happen. I just wanted to say that was a really good comment, but I think it was Big E, who made the comment. But it fit in with House of the Dragon of sometimes war is coming. It doesn't matter how it started. And that's where we're at with this.
Since you mentioned the post show, during the post show, McIntyre invaded the set and absolutely lost his mind. He was throwing referees. He elbowed Adam Pearce in the face. Wade Barrett had to jump off the desk to get between them. He told McIntyre his career wasn't over because of this and to calm down. It was an extremely, extremely hot moment. And it's now to the point that, again, if he doesn't slice him in half with the Claymore, he needs to get arrested for attempted manslaughter or something. Like he said, I know where your family lives to Punk as part of this.
Look, I said 2 weeks ago when Drew McIntyre beat him up behind closed doors that he should have hit him with a car. Do that now.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Also, Punk did have a post-show press conference. Said he feels great. He won't say whether he's cleared, obviously. He said there are procedures in place to ensure he's healthy before he wrestles again, which he wished existed 10 years ago, of course, when he had his medical issues with WWE. He also no commented on Rollins' words to him after the match. So, again, they are going to be building that story. Let's move to women's Money in the Bank. Io Sky, Chelsea Green, Lyra Valkyria, Tiffany Stratton, Naomi, and Zoe Stark. Io had an awesome moment on the Friday kickoff where she was cutting a promo in pretty damn good English. The crowd started chanting, and she basically told them to shut up just so she could finish what she was saying. It really popped me. The only build on SmackDown was a brawl between all the competitors during a women's singles match. We'll talk more about that on Tuesday's show, but briefly, Chris, I did kind of enjoy that they did it in a different way. And it was a brawl, and they didn't all have to talk. I just thought it was effective.
Yeah, I mean, especially when comparing to the men's one, like we said, they did it differently, and it worked.
So for this match, Tiffany probably got the biggest pop on entrances, but Chelsea got chants and a sustained reaction as the bell rang. We learned she's afraid of heights, so she tried using the ladder to knock the briefcase rather than climb for it. Lyra had a great backwards press of Io into a ladder before Sky saved a botched tornado DDT off the ropes. Valkyria thanked her with a nasty fisherman's buster into a ladder. Zoe then did like a Samoan drop or something of Lyra into a ladder, but only her arm hit. I thought she broke her arm. It was a thud. It was nasty. And then in a third straight botch to open the match, Zoe did her flipping corkscrew off the ropes, but the ladder was way too close and she completely missed. Naomi luckily saved the match by hitting two really good moves in a row. She did a jumping split and then a split-legged moonsault onto ladders. Stratton then did her cartwheel Alabama slam of Naomi into a ladder, which was nasty. Then she used the ladder as a ramp, running up of it and hitting a swanton bomb outside. Lyra was hanging off a ladder in a tree of woe. She grabbed Io climbing for a tarantula German suplex. This was off the damn rails at this point. Naomi got caught doing a split between two ladders, somehow hitting a DDT on Stark off of them. Two ladders were fully set up with two ladder bridges to the ropes. Zoe Uranagi'd Io into one of them. Chelsea did a modified unpretty her on Naomi into the same ladder. It got set up again. Io then killed Zoe with a Michinoku driver into the other ladder bridge. Chelsea scurries to the top of the ladder. The crowd is going absolutely bonkers. They want her to win this so freaking bad. She was grabbing the briefcase, ready to unhook it, when Tiffy ran up, stopped her, and then pushed Chelsea off the ladder, outside the ring, straight through two tables ringside. A major spot, and one of the most perfect table bumps you probably will ever see. Eye-catching and super safe the way it was executed.
Mm-hmm.
Stratton then grabbed the briefcase, and she became Ms. Money in the Bank in 17 minutes. Look, there are probably some women's ladder matches out there that I haven't seen for one company or another. As far as I'm concerned, this was the greatest women's ladder match of all time, full stop. It was also one of the best Money in the Bank ladder matches, male or female. Yeah, the first 3 minutes were botch city. Yes, it came off the botches in the world title match, and therefore the crowd started kind of out of it. They're like, oh my God, they're still botching everything. But holy shit, once Naomi got going, these women delivered. Remember some of those criticisms I had for the men's match? Like the sequences and spots, not using more than two people? We got that completely here. I mean, go back, rewind this show 90 seconds and listen to every spot I just called for the match. Hell, pause this show and go watch the women's ladder match again. Are you kidding me? This was bedlam. Major spot after major spot. Literally the only stuff preventing this from being a 5-star match for me were some of those early botches. Like we talked about on the Ultimate Preview, Tiffany or Chelsea had to win. It really seemed like Green was going to take it, and I still maintain it would have been the better decision because Stratton is so young. They were in Canada. Chelsea may never get a better reaction than this. but it is hard to disagree with pushing Tiffy. Listener Dumb Wrestling Fan at MFMT1982 actually shared a smart observation. The only Zoe Stark in this match was on the main roster before Triple H took over creative. He signed Naomi, Chelsea. He brought Io back from leaving the company. Then he called up Stratton and Valkyria. You want to talk about a women's evolution? This match was the paradigm of a women's evolution in WWE. I'm not even sure there was an MVP. Everyone busted their ass. Lyra, Zoe, and Chelsea, they sold everything. Io was exceptional. Naomi was great. You see what I mean? This was an extraordinary match. 4.5 stars A.
Yeah, easily the best match of the night. Again, they were put in a pretty tough spot after the botches that were in the World Heavyweight Championship match. And they worked their asses off. All of them. It was tremendous. And the Chelsea ladder spot was wild. And it's also why I much prefer TLC matches, so to speak, rather than ladder matches. Because ladders freaking hurt, man. And you got to put them in unique spots, and something can go wrong, and you can hit your head on something. Tables are always just a much safer landing spot. And the Chelsea spot there was exactly the reason why. It was a very crazy and looked dangerous spot, but it was done perfectly and completely safe. That's exactly how you want to do that. Major props to Chelsea for taking that bump perfectly. She has been killing it for months. I picked Tiffany to win this just to be different, but I was hoping Chelsea Green was going to win.
Right? Like I legitimately wanted her to win.
Tiffany's not going anywhere. She can just get a world title shot.
Right.
You know, she can earn her way to a world title
shot
very easily. Chelsea's probably not going to do that. And that's why it's disappointing that Chelsea didn't win. But I get why they went with Tiffany. She's going to turn it into a little purse, Money in the Bank briefcase, sell 1 million of those. I get it. But
don't forget, they're telling the story with her and Nia Jax becoming friends. Nia has a title opportunity at SummerSlam. They could team together. Nia could win the title while her friend has the briefcase. Promises. There's so many different story points that they can do with both of them. Potentially one being champion and one holding the briefcase. Like it makes sense why they did it. But dude, Chelsea, like I don't know that she'll ever be hotter than she was in this match.
Right. It's gonna be tough to reach that spot. Yeah. In which case, very Matt Cardona of her. Although I guess look, Matt Cardona won a ladder match at WrestleMania. So
he won a title, yeah.
But everybody in this was fantastic, and I'm glad they all got a chance to shine. Major props to all of them. Again, match of the night without a doubt.
I know you don't grade all the matches like I do. What would you give this? I'm just curious.
I'd probably like 4.4, 4.5. Similar to
so what I said. Okay. So Stratton confronted Trish Stratus backstage. She was bragging. She also got arrogant, saying she's going viral after her win. Stratus said winning the briefcase is only part of the battle. What she does with it is ultimately what will matter. This could have just been to give Stratton some rub. I get it. But holy shit, would I love Stratus against Stratton at SummerSlam. Could you imagine?
Give me what I want.
Match.
Give me what I want.
Sure. Stratus, Stratton in a strap match. Just make the alliteration go crazy on my tongue. Yeah. But dude, I mean, that would be a sick match.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Trish was fantastic in her last go around, other than on the mic. But neither of them need to be on the mic very much. Just let them go wrestle. It'd be a banger.
It'd be awesome. All right, let's move to the final match on the card. Intercontinental Championship. Sami Zayn defending against Braun Breaker. This was second on the show. Braun got his third entrance theme already in WWE. Now, this was far better than the one we've heard recently on television. Not as good as his original NXT jam. Breaker saved Zayn on an Arabian press. He undershot it. Veteran move by the rookie. Braun dominated offensively with a Steiner line and suplexes. Sami got up with an assisted Escalera Tornado DDT, but Braun continuously countered his attempted big moves outside. Zayn got a blue Thunderbomb inside. Breaker came back with a sick Frankensteiner where he just calmly walked to the top rope and he posed before hitting it. Sami leapfrogged a potential spear into the steel steps, but ate a jumping clothesline off the apron onto the table. Braun hurt his knee, I think. Commentary got wiped out, like stopped working. Sami hit an exploder, then Braun countered a haluva kick with a jumping knee. Breaker hit a press power slam, but Zayn countered the spear with a kick and hit haluva kick to win clean and retain the title in 13 minutes. This was a strong match bell to bell. The goal was to get Breakker over as a legitimate title contender, and that was accomplished. I loved that he took a clean loss to a guy who was half a second away from beating Roman Reigns and just ended Gunther's streak at WrestleMania. I know some people wanted Braun to get the Brock Lesnar push and win the title right away. I never saw that as being a good decision, given how Zayn won the title and how recently he won the title. You cannot have him drop the strap in 3 months, even if you and I both agree, which we do, that he never should have won it in the first place, let alone being the person to end Gunther's streak and also then go and beat Gable 3 times. And you can't have him luck his way into winning every match either. He cut a promo after the show, and it's the appropriate promo. How long is he going to be considered the underdog when he wins all these big matches? So I think that's the direction they're going with the character, and you can't go in that direction if he squeaks by a rookie. Babyface champions need to win decisively sometimes. I don't understand why everyone is turned on Sami Zayn. This is the definition of former Daniel Bryan calling fans fickle. You are the people who wanted him to beat Roman Reigns a year ago. Now you're angry that he's retaining against Braun Breakker? You're being ridiculous. Was this as great as it could have been? Probably not. Braun still needs seasoning. He's had many better singles matches. The crowd was obviously all in with Sami, but it was not as lively as you would think a Canadian crowd would be for its hero. I know he's from Montreal. I know he's French-Canadian, and he's not from Toronto, but they were crazy for Kevin Owens later in the show. They were not like that in the same level for Sami. That probably took away from the match being as hot as it could have been. One other element I appreciated is WWE quickly ended any talk of a Braun Breakker streak without getting pinned or submitted. Not everyone needs that. And if he kept winning without ever losing, that would have been the conversation. I'm glad it won't be a thing. I went 3.75 stars B+.
Yeah, this was a really good match. Really enjoyed it. And I think we both picked Sami, but said we'd be fine if Braun won.
Right.
And look, he's a guy who just got to the main roster. He doesn't need to win the belt right away. I know he just kind of, threw Ricochet out of the company and has been on a tear. But sometimes you need the young guy to get taken down by the veterans, so to speak. I almost would have loved if Sami won via roll up or something like that. Just outsmarted.
See, I'm
him.
glad he didn't, because he wins so many matches that way. He beat Gable that way, I think, a couple times.
He does, but you would tell it in the way that the smarts he outsmarted.
Yeah, the veteran Weil outsmarted the.
Yeah, that Braun's great. He's got a great future. He can run 25 miles per hour in the ring. But he's got to use his head more often. He's the veteran gets one over on him type of stuff. I think that would have been a good story to tell, as opposed to he's not really an underdog anymore, or he is or he isn't, or whatever. And look, I do agree. We didn't want Sami to win at WrestleMania, but he did. And if he's going to do that, you got to make it matter.
Right.
It can't be a quick 2-month, 3-month Intercontinental reign and he moves on. You have to make this specific Intercontinental reign matter because of the one that preceded it, because of what Gunther did for that belt. You've got to make this mean something.
And because of who Sami is. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but because of who they've built Sami Zayn into being. You can't build someone into an upper mid-carder like him and then just have him lose the title right away. It doesn't work. Yeah.
So very curious where it goes from here. Honestly, don't really have any idea. And that's interesting. You could have these guys keep doing this, or you could send them off in different directions. It would be totally fine too. So curious where it goes.
Given what we've seen on Raw, what do you think about a rematch at SummerSlam, but with Sheamus, Ludwig Kaiser, and or Ilya Dragunov? I think that is what you do, like a fatal 4-way type of deal.
Yeah. Well, didn't we talk on the preview? We think Kaiser versus Sheamus will make sense for Bash at Berlin.
That's a long ways off, though. It depends how long Kaiser's out and whether they can push it.
It's one pay-per-view after SummerSlam.
True, and it's later that same month, too. It's beginning of August and end of August. So maybe they do save that. Maybe it's Sheamus and Ilya Dragunov then. And you do a 4-way with them.
That could work.
And maybe do Sheamus and Dragunov and Kaiser cost Sheamus. And that's how you continue their feud.
Yeah, you could do a lot of things. I think Dragunov being in the mix, Braun and Dragunov together, they work magic. I mean, there's a lot of that'd be a great way to really put the big football stadium shine on both Dragunov and Braun in a match together with Sammy, with some veterans as well. That'd be a good idea. I like it.
All right, cool. So there was one other big segment at Money in the Bank, and that had Trish. By the way, she was the host. I don't think I mentioned that at all. She introduced John Cena. This was after the Intercontinental title match, so after the second match of 5 on the show. Obviously, he got a huge pop. His presence in Toronto, unfortunately, was spoiled online earlier. Hopefully, you didn't see it, Chris.
I didn't see that.
Good
I
for
love
you.
that.
And I didn't text you on purpose. I did. I was very upset about that. He had a new shirt that said John Cena Farewell Tour with a door on the back that said, after this, you can't see me, which is very corny. And then a hat that said, the last time is now. Cena in the ring, got big pop, obviously. He announced his retirement, but he just said, like, I'm retiring, and then, like, stopped. So it's like, oh, right now you're done? Like, that's it? But it did not appear to be imminent by the way he was saying it. He praised the Canadian fans for always showing up, even when WWE was ice cold. I thought it was interesting that he said that. Cena didn't get specific in this moment, but he said he will do a farewell tour in 2025, including the first Raw on Netflix, the Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, and WrestleMania 41. Then it kind of ended there. But what he did say is that he would be part of the Money in the Bank post-show press conference, and he would answer every single question that reporters had about this. So, in the press conference, Cena first said that retiring in 2025, it was odd. He said it was not up to me, but that he brought up the idea of a farewell tour to WWE some time ago, and he heard back recently that 2025 would be the best year to execute it due to the Netflix deal and multiple other factors. He also said he would not be handpicking his opponents. There was one question I was waiting for someone to ask Cena. When specifically his last match will be. Is it going to be at WrestleMania, or is it going to be later in the year? It was never asked, so he offered up the answer himself. He said he's going to wrestle through December 2025. He is scheduled for 30 to 40 dates next year. WrestleMania will be his last Mania, but not his last match in WWE. He also said he will never return to the ring once this happens, not even to be a special guest referee or anything like that in the future. He finds that to be cheap, which, by the way, is true. He also said he would love to get a 17th championship, but that has to be earned, and his recent track record is not strong, which is also true. But he did mention Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, and Money in the Bank as possible ways he could earn a title shot. Cena extended this so long, the WWE PR woman was losing her mind trying to get him to stop. Every time she's like, last question, he goes, no, I said every question. So it went on and on and on. He commandeered the entire thing. Now, we're going to talk a lot more about Cena's forthcoming retirement on Tuesday's show, probably through the end of 2024. And we're going to also talk about matches we want him to have before he calls it quits, all that. But Chris, I had 2 immediate thoughts, and I know you have some thoughts as well coming out of this. My first was, okay, if he's not going to retire at WrestleMania, maybe they're going to do SummerSlam 2025 in Boston. It would make the perfect retirement for him, and maybe that's the reason they haven't announced that location yet. Mm-hmm. But if he's saying he's wrestling till December, then maybe they do Survivor Series in Boston and push that into early December as opposed to doing it in November. The other was, I indeed want him to win. And I had this thought before he even mentioned it. I want him to win either the Royal Rumble or Elimination Chamber or Money in the Bank. And I do want him to win a 17th title. I thought the press conference was much more clear than the in-ring segment. That was a little confusing. All in all, Chris, I love this decision. I love that Cena is getting an entire farewell tour. He deserves it. The fans deserve it. It speaks to his character, his passion for the business, and for it to come right as WWE is peaking in popularity, he deserves to go out on top with a full run like this in front of a crowd that's going to appreciate him, as opposed to really when he retired as a full-time superstar, they were done with him and they were booing him, and it was a half and half crowd. He deserves to be cheered for 12 months, and I'm really happy WWE is doing it this way.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. When he first popped up and Trish introduced him, I was like, wait, are we doing exactly what we did at Money in the Bank last year? Which is John Cena comes out and tells the fans to tell your local government to pay up for a WrestleMania.
I thought so too. Yeah.
That's what I thought we were going to get. And then I saw the shirt and I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is different. And he absolutely deserves to go out this way. And it's a really just smart move. You know, you'll see sometimes some coaches or players say, I don't want a farewell tour. I don't want to do that. When they don't want the Kobe farewell or something like that. But in pro wrestling, like, you do want to do it like that a lot of the times. You want to let everybody know, hey, this is the last time John Cena's coming to Corpus Christi, Texas, or coming to Chicago, or doing all these things. And like,
hell yeah, I'm gonna go see him when he's close to me. I'm gonna see that 100%.
That is the whole point. So it's a really good idea. I'm glad they clarified what exactly that meant. He said 30 to 40 dates through 2025, so there's going to be a lot of him. And it's kind of wild, like you said, he's been a part-timer for a very long time. Like, it was WrestleMania 34 when he was doing the Undertaker thing, you know, like popping up to do an Undertaker feud. He hasn't been full-time in so long. He hasn't won a match, a singles match, in so long. I think we kind of forget that. And for the guy who really carried WWE through some of its worst creative times in the modern era, all those years in the late 2000s, the ups and downs of the 2010s, company is on fire now, and John Cena absolutely deserves to be, not just be a part of it, but be a meaningful part of it. 30 to 40 dates in a year tells me, like, he's going to be doing storylines. It's not just going to be I'm here for a month to do an Austin Theory thing, you know? Like, I think we're going to get, I'm sure he wants to, I think we're going to get John Cena doing wrestling stories again, kind of like what we got with The Rock last year. I'm sure he saw what The Rock did, not be a heel, but just like be around a lot.
Yes.
And have a lot of fun with that. And I think we're going to get that. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. There's so many people he can, and I'm sure will work with. He made a comment that he probably hasn't wrestled most of the roster at this point.
It's true.
Which is true. And there's a lot to deal with in terms of last opponent and whatever. Who knows? That's a year and a half from now. A lot of things are going to change. But to your point on number 17, I'm not sure. I'm very torn. We have 2 belts now. It'd be very easy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to set up and clean. He's got a year, easily could do it. But I did kind of come around on loving the idea that it's both him and Ric Flair at the top. Ric Flair is more, if you, depending on certain things, however you want to look at it. But like, Ric Flair is on the Mount Rushmore. I don't think John Cena is, but
well,
we may in 10 to 15 years say John Cena's on the Mount Rushmore. He may be that person who inspired an entire generation of future Hall of Famers. We just don't know that yet. I don't know if people thought what they think about Ric Flair now in the 1980s, you know, like, I don't know.
Ric Flair is on the professional wrestling Mount Rushmore. John Cena is on the WWE Mount Rushmore based on what they go by. I'd say even without Flair there, perhaps. So you give him 17 for that reason. I mean, again, this is a lot. We're going to have months and maybe even 18 months to have this conversation. Like, it's very possible. But the long and short of it is they stopped him at 16 for 2 reasons. One, because they didn't want to just put him over Flair and have it not mean anything. But 2, they wanted 17 if they chose to do it to be meaningful. And if you're going to do a farewell tour, very similar to how The Rock came in and won the title for the John Cena feud, you book something that way. And I don't know if it would be Cena winning 17 and then feuding with one of his all-timers, Punk or Orton, and dropping it to them, or legitimately putting over someone like Braun Breaker. I don't know if you can, you can definitely keep Breaker from the world title for 18 months. But what if he puts over Braun Breaker at Survivor Series and Braun wins the World Heavyweight Championship from John Cena? I mean, you go out on your back, you get a last title reign. Like, there's a lot, or Gunther beats you or whoever. There's a lot of, you do John Cena and Cody in an all-time, like, it's the Rock Hulk Hogan of this generation. There's so many things that they could do to make that title worthwhile. Although I know Rock Hogan, was it for the I don't think there was a title involved in that. There wasn't. Point is, there's no issue for me whatsoever with giving him 17. And because you have 2 titles, you can do it. If you only had 1, it'd be very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could have him. I could see him beating Cody at WrestleMania and then losing it back to him at SummerSlam or something like that. Because I think if he wins 17, it's got to be the main WWE title. It can't be the World Heavyweight title.
It should be the main WWE title, ideally.
Yeah. So who knows? I don't think he'll.
What about he wins Money in the Bank? And again, we're going to get into this. He wins Money in the Bank. SummerSlam's in Boston. He cashes in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, he'd have to announce it ahead of time, like he did with the CM Punk one back in the day.
Okay, he could say whoever he could either announce it as a challenge, or you could say I will be cashing in on the winner.
There's a million possibilities, and it's hard to pick something that would be wrong. I mean, he's John Cena. I just think if you're gonna do 17, you want to do that at WrestleMania. You know, you want the record to be broken there. But we could have Rock Roman, we could have Punk Rollins. Like next year's WrestleMania could be freaking loaded.
Yeah, especially now, because like we have no idea what Rock necessarily is going to do, and now you have John Cena where you're adding him to the mix for the whole year. It changes every expectation for next year. Like,
right. So it really opens up a whole ton of possibilities and fantasy booking ideas.
All right, we're going to put a pin in this. Like I said, we're going to talk more about it on Tuesday in our regular WWE episode, and we're going to talk more about it over the next 18 months, especially the next 6 before Cena starts, and then over the year after that from January 1st until December 2025. I had 4 other items briefly from the show I wanted to discuss before we get into our grades for WWE Money in the Bank. First, while WWE's production has improved 1,000,000% since Kevin Dunn left the company, I wonder if you agree with me when I say this. Errors, like mistakes, production mistakes, have quintupled. That includes graphics, audio, camera switching. There was a huge mistake in the kickoff show where the audio was just wrong for like 3 to 4 minutes. And then we saw what happened in the match with McIntyre's entrance not happening on time. It's okay to have growing pains, but they've had a change in this role for a long enough time now. And WWE is a big enough company where this stuff needs to get worked out. If you watch a football broadcast, be it CBS, NBC, Fox, ESPN, you might see a mistake on the broadcast. You don't see 6, and you don't see them happen all year. You might see them in week 1 or week 2, and then they're very rare from that point forward. They got to get this worked out because it's not the end of the world, but WWE's better than this, and the production has improved to such a large degree that this is holding it back from no longer being an issue.
Yeah, look, I mean, say what you will about Kevin Dunn, and there's a lot to say. WWE like never made production mistakes in the past.
Yeah,
like you may have disagreed with the way they did things and the Zoom cams and all that stuff, but they didn't make mistakes. And that is what stood out so much about AEW, especially in the early days, because you were comparing it to WWE's production. But yeah, they've been making a lot more mistakes than they have in the past. Like weird little things too. Like how do you, like I was watching the kickoff show too, like right before they did the sound issue where they were doing the Rollins Priest video, but the audio was not playing. Right before that, Jackie Redmond was supposed to be kicking to something that like didn't happen, and then
she was waiting for Wade Barrett to start talking, and he just never did. So she's like, "All right, I'm just going to throw this video back." It's like
it was really weird, just like little bizarre things. So yeah, it's definitely noticeable and strange and un-WWE like.
And speaking of unforced errors, so WWE held its kickoff show on Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. They're doing this seemingly for every international event, at least, if not every event now going forward, 3 hours before SmackDown. Randomly, at one point during that show, out of nowhere, Michael Cole announced that WWE wanted to do a whiteout for Money in the Bank, which made 0 sense to me, Chris, for 2 key reasons. Number 1, 95% of wrestling t-shirts are black.
Yes.
Okay. This isn't like when Penn State does a whiteout and white is one of their 2 primary colors. The literal primary color of WWE and its clothing is black. And then 2, WWE announced the whiteout effort 26 hours before the show. Right. Again, when a college team does this, it's usually announced months in advance or at least weeks in advance. And when they do announce it, it's campus-wide. It's on social media. It's not a one-off on a kickoff show, which is the lowest rated program in all of WWE this week. Or if they don't do something like that, and like it's an NBA team, they provide the shirts for everyone in attendance so they make sure the effort succeeds. I don't understand the purpose of doing it in the first place, Chris, but if WWE is going to try to execute something like this again, They have to do it better in literally every possible way. It was almost like someone on Tuesday was like, hey, should we try to do a whiteout? Yeah, that sounds good. Let's just tell them on the kickoff show. Like, what the hell was this?
So the show started and I was like, there's a lot of people wearing white here. There's like more than I've ever seen.
It was like
show.
It was
and
like 25% maybe.
Hold on. This is going on.
Okay, yeah.
And I text my brother that, and he texts me back the whiteout thing. I didn't see it. I didn't watch the whole kickoff show.
Right.
I did the kickoff on Friday. So like I didn't even know what was going on. So yeah, like if they had announced this a couple days or weeks in advance, you got to say it on TV, obviously, then it would have gone a lot better. I think it would have looked really cool.
By the way, Chris, they could have special released an entire line of white shirts at the venue so that people could buy them. Like the new Jey Uso shirt's white, but it was one.
The other weird part of that. I went back and watched the clip. Michael Cole says, if you're going to SmackDown, pick up your white towel like on the way out or something like that. To which I was like, wait, you're giving it to the people on Friday to bring on Saturday? What?
They did a lot of ticket packages, so the idea would have been that they'd be the same people.
But just hand it out to everybody when you walk into the arena on Saturday,
right,
like they do for every other sports game.
Right. They did it wrong in every way. They did it wrong in every single way.
The execution of it was bizarre, but I really like the idea. I think it would have looked super cool, especially after you've done France and Scotland and you're trying to differentiate another international, so to speak, crowd in a different way. I actually thought that was a pretty cool idea because, again, you don't see white wrestling crowds because there aren't white wrestling shirts. I mean, white.
I know. I was going to say, that's a problematic comment right there.
but like, I love the idea.
Yeah.
I do, actually. I just think they executed it in a bizarre, not very good type of way.
Yeah, literally as poorly as they possibly could have executed it. Two more things. One, Samantha Irvin finally got to sing before a WWE event. She was obviously excellent, her voice, but they gave her maybe the worst Star Spangled Banner backing track I think I've ever heard in my life. Meanwhile, they have a Canadian come out and do "O Canada," which is a fantastic national anthem, and he was allowed to do it a cappella. So why isn't Samantha Irvin, who went to like the semifinals of The Voice, I think was the show, or was it America's Got Talent? I'm forgetting. I should know that fact. It's my fault. Why was she not able to sing a cappella with a backing track that didn't even fit her flow? So on one hand, Samantha Irvin singing before the show.
Thank you.
On the other hand, doing that backing track.
No.
Most sports games don't use a backing track either. They just let the singer go.
Yeah.
Too. I don't remember what they did at WrestleMania, if they had a backing track or not, but that's a big change from the Vince to the Triple H era that I don't agree with, which is that America the Beautiful is a better song and should be the national anthem. But if you're in Canada, you're doing both anthems, you got to obviously do the Star Spangled Banner.
Right.
But to your point earlier as well about the production issues, this went long. By the time they finished "O Canada," it was like 6:02 Central Time. Like they had gone over the time. So that's just another point, because the Star Spangled Banner is going on and I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, are we not going to do "O Canada" in "O Canada"? Because I don't know if you're going to be able to fit it in, but they did do it. I like that they did it. They do, by the way, they do the national anthem at like dog shows that I go to.
Every sporting event, I believe, in Canada.
They do it every year. So like, it makes total sense to do it. Love the idea. But hit your time better.
For both ladder matches, lastly, the piece of metal, whatever you want to call it, holding the carabiner that contains the briefcase, it had the Boys, the Amazon Prime show sponsor logo on it. And the literal briefcases each had Vought International branding. That's like the main evil company on that show. I don't know if you watch The Boys, but it kind of popped me, just given the randomness that they had Vought sponsor the briefcases. They did some ads inserted in the show. They also had the barricades and ring posts with branding during those two matches. But just like I begged WWE to do after WrestleMania, they had dark backgrounds. So they didn't distract too much. Now, there was animated confetti that took a little bit of getting used to, but having it dark and inserting the ads where they weren't like crazy in your face the entire time, I was totally fine with it.
Yeah, I know of The Boys. I haven't watched The Boys, but also aren't we like in the middle of the season right now?
It's like kind of 4-ish episodes into the season, and it is not at all PG or TV-14. It is a
yeah.
violent, gruesome, bloody
Right.
show.
And I've heard people have been kind of down on the season, but I just meant it's kind of a weird time they advertise the show when you're in like the middle of it. Usually you do
Yeah.
this like as you're kicking off the season, so that was kind of weird. But hey, look, it's a sponsor that I know, and it didn't have a gigantic white screen distracting me during the match, so all fine in my book.
Let me ask you a question. Had you ever heard of, and this is why people do marketing and advertising, had you ever heard of Wheatley American Vodka before they sponsored WWE?
I'd not heard of them before until they sponsored Cody.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
But I'm not a giant alcohol guy. I don't know how big or small they are.
No, sure, but like, major alcohol brands.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, I had never heard of it. Like, I didn't
It's
even
not
know.
great, I know it's not Grey Goose,
That's what I'm
That's
saying.
what I
Like,
know about
it was nothing that was in my consciousness. So I guess they succeeded. I don't know that I'd ever buy it, but I guess that's the point of
Hey, the
marketing and
Prime
advertising.
one succeeded. Our listeners
We did
know
try
that.
Prime. We did try Prime. Yeah, that's true.
I still drink it. It's good.
Not a huge fan. All right, let's move finally to our WWE Money in the Bank grades. Now, before we get to our post-show grades, let's first remind everyone what our pre-show expectation grades were. Chris was at I believe 92 out of 100, an A-. I actually forgot mine. I should have listened back. It was either 90 or 91. I think I said 91 out of 100, an A- as well. And you, our listeners, are getting overheads. You had the opportunity to share your pre-show expectation grades on Twitter at Getting Overcast before the show. You said 60% A, 35.5% B, 3.5% C. That averaged to a 91.6 out of 100. So an A-, literally right between us, but that does round up to a 92. So everyone was on the same page going into WWE Money in the Bank. Now, coming out of the show, as always on this podcast, Vintage Chris Vanini gets to give his grade and explanation first. Then we will go to the listener grade, and the Silver King will wrap it up. So, Chris, what was your final grade for WWE Money in the Bank?
B-. And that was
Wow.
very, very close to a C+.
Wow.
And it's for a few reasons. One, I think the grading system's gotten kind of boring when everything's an A- or an A, and I think we need to kind of have some wider variance
guess.
when things aren't good. But two, like, this was the strangest and worst WWE pay-per-view in a long time. They have been on a absolute heater for years, but to do the Money in the Bank stuff the way they did, to botch the World Heavyweight Championship match and basically negate the first match on the show was incredibly frustrating. And then the main event just was a TV show main event. Like, there was nothing. The only thing I came out of this being like, yeah, like, that was great and things are awesome and I can't wait to see what happens next. The only place I felt that was the women's Money in the Bank, which was fantastic. Everything else felt stagnant or TV level, or they completely blew it, like the World Heavyweight Championship. So, there weren't any title changes. You had a failed cash in. The only notable thing that will come out of this show is the women's match. The rest, not good. B-.
I'm surprised you're that low. What's your number on that? 80? Are you saying it's 80? Like, it's that close?
Yeah, I said close. I said 80. I said it was close to a C+. I'm going to go 80.
Wow, I'm really surprised you're that low, because so I don't necessarily disagree with much of what you said, but there's also just like, was I entertained? And I look at that with AEW shows, with WWE shows. If I don't like the matches, but I had a really good time watching it, then, and I wasn't frustrated at the entire card, then I'm not going to go into C territory, and I'm certainly, maybe not even going to go to bottom B territory. If you pulled out everything from the Damian Priest or production botch to the end of that match, if you just erased that from history, this is not anywhere near a B- show. It's probably a B+ or higher show, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure, but it was a very, very important
It was,
thing.
but it doesn't change. But for me, it doesn't change.
As badly as possible.
It doesn't change 3 hours and however long, 15 minutes of show, a 4-minute sequence is what I'm trying to say. So I'm taking that into consideration. I'm just saying when I give my grade eventually. Now, before I get to my grade, let's go to the listener grade. We had 14% A plus to A, 44% A minus to B plus, 37% B to B minus, and 5% C plus or lower. That averages out to an 87.9 out of 100, so a B plus for the listeners. So they're very different from you. And here's my take on the entire thing. First, these 5-match cards need to stop. Okay.
Yep.
Now, I watch on Peacock Premium Plus, which is a ridiculous name. If it's premium, then why do I need the plus? But I digress. I don't get the ads. Now, I mean, I get the ads that are part of the show, but I don't get the ads between the matches like everyone else does. I see the video packages for the matches. So I don't get as annoyed at the space between matches as others do. I get up, I walk the dog sometimes, I go to the bathroom, I get water. I don't hate that. I actually do kind of hate when it's match after match after match and you can't catch your breath. But I know the experience is poor for everyone else or a lot of other people. There's really no reason not to do a minimum of 6 matches for any show and then 7 or 8 for shows like this, obviously more for a SummerSlam or WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, etc. If they threw in the excellent tag team title match from Friday night or Liv Morgan against Zelina Vega from Monday night, I think people are looking at the show a lot differently. Those were 2 matches that were as good as anything on this card with the exception of the women's Money in the Bank match. And they were better in many cases than some of the matches on this card. All in all, this may be the toughest WWE show we've had to grade. The wrestling was pretty high quality throughout. And even in the world title match, again, up until that botch and then the booking, like I said earlier, it was reaching a peak. It was getting super duper hot. I saw people complaining about Sammy, fickle, like I said earlier. I did wish the men's ladder match was slightly better, but I think it's being heavily underrated. It was inventive, well wrestled, clean. Really, the only issue I had on the entire show was McIntyre's wasted cash-in. So how much do I let that one moment affect what was otherwise an immensely enjoyable show overall? So I'm at an 86 out of 100, the high end of a B. It was slightly better than good, nowhere near great. I certainly do not think it was approaching average or where you are. I think you're way low. I mean, we're allowed to disagree.
I'm a B minus. We're not that far
We're
apart.
6 points apart. That's the largest gap we've been apart in years. I mean,
but
let's be honest.
Back to what I was saying about our scale being so tight. We need to like stretch this out a little bit. We're like a B minus and a
well,
B
the problem is, Chris, the problem is that neither WWE nor AEW are putting on bad shows. So that negates the C and D. Like, we're not giving shows C's and D's because they're not bad. They're never bad.
We used to, by the way, back in the Vince era, we had
shows were bad, so we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we were very harsh on WWE for a long time, but I mean, they don't really miss these days. So, I don't know that I disagree that it was like the worst show of this era. I mean, maybe I'm misremembering.
I think it was of the Triple H era. I think it was.
Maybe I'm misremembering. Was Elimination Chamber that good? I remember being frustrated at that card.
They go in and out of my head. I don't remember anything that happened.
Yeah, it's been a long year. It's been a long half of a year.
But look, you even tweeted the Priest cash-in thing was the worst creative decision.
It was
of the Paul Levesque era.
Yes,
it negated the opening match on the show, essentially wiping away 2/5 of the card when you have 5 matches.
True, but that's accurate, and I stand by that, and I believe that totally. But that's storytelling versus entertainment value. So, like, I sat and watched this show. I'm not gonna tell you I didn't have fun. I didn't enjoy myself.
I go back and look at I feel worse about the men's match because of what it meant within the show. Yeah. It's all part of one story. You can't separate the men's ladder match and what happened, an hour later. It's kind of all tied together. And so when you kind of negate 2/5 of the show and then 2 of the other matches were essentially TV main events, it's hard for me to be like, this was like great. And you're not saying it was great. I'm not saying it was terrible. Yeah. I'm just giving it a B minus.
I think we both agree that, and it's fine. The listeners thought it was really good. That's great. I think we both agree it was not a B plus show. I mean, I just gave Forbidden Door a B plus, I think, or an A minus. Yeah.
Yeah. If you throw DIY's tag team match on there, It probably
If
is.
you threw
'Cause
both, let
can
me ask you
get over
this.
the bad stuff more when you have more matches.
Let's just make believe. If they put both of those matches on this show, the tag team match from SmackDown and the Liv Zelina match, which was very good from Raw, this for me is an A- high B+ show.
Yeah, I think
Those
put
were
it there.
excellent matches.
It was also just such a weird show because, again, you're 20 minutes in before you get your first wrestling match. You
Yeah.
got the long John Cena segment in between. There was so much time in between the matches. It just very up and down. The flow was weird.
Yeah.
It felt like they tried something and it wasn't enough.
It was also like the fourth PLE with 3 weeks of build. So you're throwing them really tightly together, which they've actually done a good job building the individual matches. It hasn't felt rushed. So credit to them creatively for doing that. But if you're going to do that, like, put your big matches on the show. I know you want people to watch TV, but I don't know how many. Look, I love DIY, and we're going to talk about them on Tuesday's show. I don't know how many people. I don't think it was a ratings driver, that match.
Oh, right, exactly.
So put it on the PLE and let them have it. If you're going to do a title change, spoiler alert, then put it on the PLE. Why would you give one of the biggest moments of the entire weekend away on SmackDown?
And I don't think the fans who bought tickets the entire weekend are like, oh man, DIY's title win made it worth it. Like they were going anyway.
Yeah, and by the way, it would have had more time on the show, and it would have not had half of it taken up by commercials from Fox. It would have been better in every possible way.
Yep.
So, all right, look, we did go long on this instant analysis. We try to be as comprehensive as we can be. It's not usual that we go this distance, but there was a lot to talk about, and certainly the John Cena retirement threw a wrench into the entire deal. Let me remind all of you, by the way, we're going to be back in 24 hours because we're going to have an NXT Heatwave instant analysis coming your way Sunday, right in this podcast feed. Before that show happens Sunday night, be sure to hit that same feed and listen to our NXT Heatwave Ultimate Preview, which is awaiting your ear holes. And then once we get past NXT Heatwave and into next week, we'll be back with a WWE episode for you on Tuesday, a second look at Money in the Bank. Going to rewatch, may regrade some matches, may change our opinions on a couple things, or may not. I think probably not. But we'll also discuss everything else that happened across SmackDown and Raw. And then next Thursday, of course, we'll have your NXT and AEW episode. So Sunday, we wrap up a 4-episode week. And then next week, we get back to our bi-weekly shows. On the way out, allow me to hit you with some reminders. First, that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
It's all about the five.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. It is also where you can send questions and comments for the show. And by the way, we will be reading those on Tuesday on the WWE edition. We didn't have time today, but we will be reading them. It's also where you can vote in our pre and post show polls. Also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast as well. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get exclusive audio, instant reactions to every major television show and exclusive news posts every single Friday. Plus, you get to support the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Thank you, of course, to Vintage Chris Vanini for joining this extended instant analysis for WWE Money in the Bank. As mentioned, we have plenty of performance-enhancing audio on the way for your ear holes through this weekend and into next week. So with that, it is time to officially sign off, and for the Silver King to leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.